Hi, thanks again for tuning in to Sin's Workshop here on YouTube. Hope everyone's having a beautiful day. Remembering to stay safe and to stay indoors as much as possible. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about Twin Daggers by MarcyKate Connolly, published by Blink. This is a young adult novel that has been labeled a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. You have your two warring factions. You have the Magi and you also have the technocrats. So with this novel, follows Asa and Zandria. They're two twin sisters, and they are spies for the Magi. The Magi have pretty much been decimated by the technocrats in the war, and so has the city. I think that's probably one of the things I really liked about this novel is the technocrats are very steampunk. It's a very steampunk type novel that's going on, to the point where everything's kind of metallic. Everything works with gears, and it's all very sci-fi. So it's a great blend of science fiction and the steampunk genre, and it's also a great blend of fantasy because the Magi are fantastical, people. They can use magic. And so I thought that was really cool how Connolly was able to blend those two genres together in such a brilliant way. And I can't say this enough. The detail and the structure to the world building, was done very well, was executed very well. And the history is also there. It's constantly unfolding throughout the novel, which if you've seen enough of these reviews, you know that that's something I appreciate. I hate when all the information is just thrown at the reader all at once. I'm not a fan of that. And I also hate when there's not enough history to the story to ground the reader in the world building, because you need the history. You need those important details in order to make a story successful with the world building. The reader should be able to visualize this world. They should be able to understand the mechanics of how this world operates. And Connolly is able to do that quite well. She structures the world, but she trickles in the history little by little. She just doesn't unload everything. She gives you the important details at the beginning of the novel. Yes, technocrats, Magi, war, bad. Magi have been utterly decimated. But the fact that she trickles in more history and more fantastical elements into the novel throughout it keep the pacing engaging. Because I will say this, the pacing does fall short sometimes. There are some scenes where the detail isn't wholly necessary. Like when Asa is working in the shop, for her apprenticeship, it doesn't seem completely necessary. These details, they don't add much to her character, and they don't add much to the plot or the dynamic with the minor character, her boss. He's very minor. He's pretty much non-existent almost. You don't really get to know him other than he's a grouchy old man. That's about it. But there are scenes like that. I will say this, they are very few and they are very far apart and spaced far enough, but they make the story drag a little bit because they don't add anything to the story. They don't add anything to the dynamics or the richness of the story development. So I will say, it did lack something in regards to pacing. It seemed a little too long, some chapters, when I was personally more interested in, the subterfuge, the tension between the characters, this underlying tension within the Magi sect themselves, all the secrecy that's going on. And that's something that I personally was more interested in. I did like the world building, but you don't need that much world building to get the story going. Sorry, my cat was being bad. She's trying to crawl on something she's not supposed to crawl on, so I had to scare her away from it. Anyway, so the pacing did drag out a little bit. It felt a little too long, like Connolly was trying to squeeze in so much essential detail, but she tried to break it up with inconsequential scene structure. Now, as for the characters themselves, I like Asa, I like Aro, I like Xandria. I think they're all really strong characters. I love the fact that, yes, 2 females, 1 male. There is no love triangle here going on. There's no love triangle. And like I said, I've said this probably before, I love when authors step away from that cliche young adult fantasy trope of a love triangle. There is no love triangle. It's 2 sisters who are absolutely devoted to each other with special skill sets that would make them a target for both technocrats and the Magi. So they only have each other that they can really count on. And they both have, separate missions. But they don't keep anything from each other. They are a very strong, dynamic duo, and I really love that there's very little that breaks these 2 sisters apart. Yes, near the end, there is a sort of wedge between them, but Xandria was captured. She doesn't know everything that Asa's had to do to keep herself alive and to keep her power a secret. But at the end of the day, they are still strong sisters, and I really did appreciate that they're not broken up by some boy. Once again, I hate when that happens, because, seriously, you guys have been through so much together. You're letting a boy get in the way. They don't let that happen. Yes, it raises some tension between them because the boy is part of the enemy, but they still stay together and they still stay strong together. Aro, I think he was a little too Romeo-esque, I guess. He falls in love with Asa pretty much from the get-go. He's smitten with her from the beginning. And it seems very shallow, because when you're smitten with someone from the very beginning and you know nothing about them, you're pretty much just going for their looks. That's how it felt to me. So I thought, that part was a little cliche. I really think the author, I think Connolly does eventually develop it more as she develops Aro's personality and his dynamic with Asa. It starts to step away from the cliches, I should say. It becomes something better, it becomes something richer, and I really did appreciate that. Because I don't need to read another Romeo and Juliet retelling. I want something different. If you want to give me a retelling, sure, that's one way to draw me in, but I don't need a step-by-step formulaic copy with new twists and turns. And I think, the added element of the steampunk, the fantasy, the twin thing, those are all really strong elements that do make this novel fresh, and they do make it different. Yes, you have the warring factions, but the way they function is incredibly different from the original tale. And I appreciated that a lot. And I do appreciate Aro's development. I think he becomes, a progressive, strong character. I think I may have liked him a little bit more if he'd had his own POV, especially because, once again, the way he just falls for Asa and just believes everything she says without a hint of suspicion. It highlights how naive he is as a character, but also how good he is as a character. And I think that's what I liked about him. He's very open-minded. He's not callous. He doesn't want to be cruel. He wants to be helpful. He wants to see the good. He wants to believe in goodness. And that's something I did take away from his personality, and that's something I did like about his personality. I just wish there was more development regarding the romance, and there is on Ace's part. There is development on the romance, but for his part, I think from the beginning he's smitten with her, and the reader can obviously see it. But what would have worked more is more depth to why he's smitten with her, more evolution on that more development on why. I want to see the why is he smitten with her. I want to understand the why is he smitten with her. But, overall, I did give this novel 4 stars because I really thought it was a nice, fresh retelling. The pacing lagged, like I said, but very few, very far apart. The tension keeps the momentum up for the most part. Once again, those scenes that do drag out, I wish they had been condensed a little bit more or just cut entirely because they didn't seem like to add anything to the story. As for the characters themselves, once again, I really did appreciate the characters. I like the twin thing, I like how there was that nice spin. I love the fantasy, and I love steampunk. I don't read a lot of steampunk because it has to be really good. My favorite steampunk is the comic book Lady Mechanica. Oh, that's a good steampunk. But I'm very picky when it comes to steampunk, and it needs to feel fresh to me. It can't just seem cliche. And so I really did appreciate the steampunk aspect of this novel and how it blended so well with the fantasy. So once again, this was Twin Daggers by MarcyKate Connolly, published by Blink. Please check out your library's digital catalog to see if you can get an ebook copy or an audiobook. And if money is not too tight, please remember to support your local booksellers and purchase the book from your local bookseller's website. And if you have a Scribd membership, check it out, see if it's on Scribd. Have a great day, guys, and as always, happy reading.